I chose to do my Pecha Kucha on juuling and vaping. Juuling and vaping is common across Penn State. We all know that, despite the rules put in place to prevent this, it still goes on. Although there may be more behind the scenes that we don't see, such as people smoking weed out of bongs, blunts, or joints, vaping and juuling is out in the open for everyone to see because no one is afraid of being caught. Just in case you don't know, I'm going to quickly share with you what juuling actually is. It is a form of vaping using an electronic device to create an aerosol that is inhaled. I asked two of my roommates what they thought of when they heard the word aerosol. One said hairspray, the other one said air freshener spray. Both examples of anthropogenic aerosols, just like juuling. Pennsylvania State University has a rule in the student handbook that states that smoking and the use of tobacco products are prohibited in and on all university or leased properties, facilities, and vehicles, with the following purposes exempted: research, cultural, and religious uses. Although this rule is in place to help create a healthy environment for everyone, what is the point if it isn't enforced? The university also provides resources to staff and students who want to stop using tobacco products. This is a great resource, and I personally know someone who has taken advantage of this and now feels free from tobacco products and not dependent anymore. Juuling and vaping can also contain nicotine, like in cigarettes and tobacco products. Some Juul pods claim to have roughly as much nicotine as an entire pack of cigarettes. Vaping can also be called juuling because they are very similar, but vaping is usually defined as an electronic cigarette or other vaping device like the ones found on the screen. Those in college, all the way down to middle schoolers who vape, believe that the liquid in vaping is only water and flavoring and are unaware that it does in fact contain nicotine. Nicotine, if you don't know, is a chemical which contains nitrogen and is made by several types of plants, including the tobacco plant. Now that description may not have scared you, but I'm going to share some facts with you about what nicotine can do to the Penn State student or Penn State employee. Nicotine is highly addictive and when ingested can affect the heart, hormones, and gastrointestinal system of a person, causing all sorts of issues for the body and the mind. In this picture, it shows a few of many effects that nicotine can have on a person. Like I said, nicotine is highly addictive, meaning a student could potentially be distracted by the need for nicotine and may harm the development of the brain. Like I also said, nicotine can affect many parts of the body when ingested, which can cause vomiting, diarrhea, increased blood pressure, infertility, and so much more. Juuling and vaping has spiked in the last 2 years and is flooding into the lives of college, high school, and even middle school students. Despite over the 1,956 U.S. universities implementing rules specially prohibiting e-cigarettes and vaporizers, and most if not all high schools and middle schools being smoke-free campuses, in September of this year there have already been 26 recorded deaths across 21 states linked to vaping. This image represents the number of vaping deaths compared to the number of sickened vapors in the last 6 months. According to the LA Times, there have been 1,479 sickened vapors, the blue dots, and 33 vaping deaths, the red dots. Many of these sickened vapors could have just as easily been a vaping death, because most people don't know what they're putting into their bodies when they vape or juul. Although Penn State has not had a vaping juul death itself, I believe that we aren't far away since hundreds of students ignore the rule of smoke juul free vape campus because they aren't being caught and or disciplined for their actions. Also, the longer this rule is not enforced, it could give time for students to be peer pressured into vaping, causing this epidemic to spread across the campus. We may be known as one of the top party schools in the country, but if we aren't careful, we could be the next university to add to this list. Penn State has made little effort, in my opinion, to protect its students for the harmful effects of vaping and juuling, but it seems as though there are some measures being taken in our federal government. In early September, President Trump announced he was going to ban e-cigarette flavors that seem specially designed to appeal to young people and get them hooked. Local lawmakers also began to take action by enforcing bans on flavored tobacco vaping products. The 17.3 billion vapors in the U.S., shown here by the blue dots, were extremely upset and held protests to regain their favorite products. President Trump always had cleared his ban on most flavored e-cigarettes by federal regulators, but in an article written yesterday, the president had to sign the one-page decision memo. He backed out due to the fear the mass amount of jobs would be lost. Although the federal government may not be able to go through with their ban on flavored tobacco and vaping products, Penn State can still enforce the rules and save countless students across campus who vape and other students who could be potentially peer pressured into vaping and become addicted as well. If the fact that our federal government can't even finish what they started doesn't bother you, let me give you a few more facts that might. We all know kids love to run around. Toddlers especially love to touch everything and even put it in their mouth too. In an article published in early October this year, doctors in Kansas were in a panic over a vaping trend where young children got a hold of their parents' or older siblings' vaping devices and ate them, full cartridges of liquid nicotine. These small children were being poisoned because their small bodies could not handle the extreme toxicity of the nicotine they consumed. Even with things like this happening all across the country, we as a university are still not cracking down as hard as we should be on juuling and vaping. This does not only affect students from middle school to college, but adults and small children as well. There may There may be a surge of 5 million new teenagers who have begun to vape in the past year, but illnesses in adults and small children related to juuling and vaping are becoming more and more common. I believe this issue can only be fixed with your help. If you don't want to be affected by others juuling and vaping, stand up and make your voice heard because your voice is much more powerful than you know. You may be one person at Penn State who wants the rules of juuling and vaping enforced, but I bet that you're not the only one who shares the same viewpoints, and others will stand with you. Penn State set a standard when they wrote this rule into the student code of conduct, stating the university was a smoke, juul, and vape-free campus. However, we fail to enforce these rules on campus. We allow students to continue what they may have started in high school or even middle school. It doesn't matter if they're using them in a place where many students don't go to avoid complaints of the smell. The thought of where we should go to vape shouldn't be a thought in the first place. Vaping and juuling is a serious matter and boggles my mind how many people can't understand that. Vaping compromises the body just as much, if not more than smoking and other drugs. Vaping and juuling kills many each year, causes thousands of more to become severely ill. Vaping and juuling affects everyone, small children, teens, and adults as well. If there's any way to prevent illness and deaths from juuling or vaping, or the spread across America across all age groups, it starts with enforcement of rules set in place by the authorities, whether they are law officials or administration. Penn State must step up and change their ways of enforcing this rule to prove that the words written weren't just written for nothing. I wrote my public problem epistolary to President Barron about how I think this should be more heavily enforced to prevent this rule from being overlooked, to prevent more teens and young adults from getting sick and dying, and to prevent this issue from becoming much more widespread to a point of where it is out of control. We may be the ones most affected by this issue, but we're also the ones who could really force the administration to step up and really show that we are a smoke-free, juul, and vape-free campus.